Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Adams. And today's topic is something deep, something real, childhood trauma, and how it still affects us as adults.
You may think your past is behind you, but what if it's quietly shaping your reactions, your relationships, and even the way you talk to yourself every day?
Today, we're going to break that down. We'll talk about what childhood trauma really is, how it shows up in adult life, and how you can begin healing, no matter where you are in your journey.
And as always, stay with us until the end for 5 useful English expressions you can use to talk about emotions and healing.
So, Emma, let's start simple. What is childhood trauma?
Most people think of trauma as big dramatic events, abuse, violence, or loss. And yes, that's part of it. But trauma can also be quiet.
Right. Trauma is anything that overwhelmed you as a child and made you feel unsafe, emotionally or physically, and you didn't have the tools to process it.
Exactly. For example, being constantly criticized or ignored, growing up in a house without affection, or never being allowed to express your emotions.
That's called emotional neglect, and it's a trauma too, just invisible.
And sometimes we don't even remember it. But our body and behavior do.
And sometimes we don't even remember it, but our body and behavior do.
Yes. Childhood trauma rarely shows up in obvious ways like flashbacks or breakdowns. Most of the time, it hides in our habits, our thoughts, and our relationships.
One of the biggest signs? People-pleasing. Saying yes when you mean no. Avoiding conflict because deep down you're afraid of rejection.
I used to do that all the time. I thought I was just being nice, but really, I was scared. Scared that if I said what I really wanted, I'd lose people. And that pattern? It started when I was a kid and felt I had to behave perfectly to be loved.
Same here. I didn't even know how to say no until I was in my late 20s. I was constantly overcommitting, not because I wanted to, but because I felt guilty if I didn't.
And that guilt doesn't come from today. Comes from childhood, when we were made to feel responsible for others' emotions or like we had to earn love.
Another sign? Perfectionism. You're terrified of making mistakes. You feel like if something isn't done perfectly, it's worthless. And you are worthless.
Yes, that's often rooted in never feeling good enough as a child. Maybe your parents only praised you when you achieved something. Or worse, maybe they never did.
So now, as an adult, you work yourself to the ground, hoping for validation. And even when you get it, it doesn't feel real, because that inner child inside you still thinks, I'm not enough.
And then there's the opposite, emotional numbness. You shut down. You don't express your feelings because you learned that it's not safe. Maybe you were punished for crying, or ignored when you were hurt.
So now you say, I'm fine, when you're clearly not. You avoid vulnerability. You keep everyone at a distance, even the people you love.
And let's talk about fear of abandonment. That deep panic when someone doesn't text back. That anxiety that says, they're going to leave.
Yes, and it's intense. You might overthink every message or apologize constantly just to make sure the person doesn't go away. It's like your nervous system is still living in the past, trying to protect you.
Exactly. Trauma keeps us stuck in survival mode. Even when we're safe, part of our mind still reacts as if danger is just around the corner.
And sometimes the patterns are subtle. You feel uncomfortable receiving compliments. You over-explain yourself all the time. You have this need to control everything because unpredictability feels scary. Or you feel emotionally exhausted, and you don't know why.
Truth is, many of these patterns were once survival strategies. As kids, we adapted to keep ourselves emotionally safe. But as adults, they limit us.
They helped us survive, but they don't help us thrive.
That's the key. When we understand where these behaviors come from, we stop blaming ourselves and we start healing.
Okay, so we talk about the pain. Now, let's talk about the path forward. Because yes, childhood trauma is real. And yes, you can heal.
And the first thing we have to say is, it's not your fault. You didn't choose the environment you grew up in. But healing is your responsibility, not because you caused the pain, but because you deserve peace.
That part.
Step 1. Awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. So begin by observing your patterns. Ask yourself, why do I react so strongly in this situation? Where did I learn to stay silent? Why do I always put others first, even when I'm exhausted?
That's what started everything for me. I stopped just saying, I'm like this, and started asking, why am I like this?
And when you start to make the link between your past and your present, you stop blaming yourself. You realize your reactions were protective. You were just surviving.
Step 2, self-compassion. That means learning to speak to yourself with kindness, especially when you make mistakes. You don't call a scared child stupid. So, why do you talk to yourself that way?
Exactly. That inner voice we use, it's often a copy of someone from our childhood. A critical parent, teacher, a sibling. But now, you get to rewrite that voice. You get to become the adult your younger self needed.
Another powerful tool is journaling. Not fancy, just honest. Write about your emotions, your triggers, your memories, even your dreams. It helps you connect the dots. I remember once I wrote, I'm afraid of being ignored. And it hit me. That was how I felt every day as a kid.
Yes, writing slows your thoughts down, gives you perspective, gives you space to reflect instead of just react. Let's talk about boundaries. I used to think boundaries were mean, but really, they're necessary. Saying no is an act of love for yourself and for others.
Boundaries don't push people away. They show people where you begin and where they end. And that's how real connection happens, when we're not betraying ourselves.
And here's something important. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll feel like nothing has changed. And that's okay. Progress isn't always visible.
Yes, you might still get triggered. You might still cry over small things. But now you notice and you respond differently. That's growth.
And if you can, please consider therapy. A trained therapist can help you see blind spots, hold space for you, and guide you through layers you didn't know were there. Therapy isn't accessible. There are also books, podcasts, support groups, and even episodes like this.
You're not alone. So many people carry invisible wounds. But healing is possible. One small, conscious step at a time.
Remember, you are not too broken. You are not too late. You are human, and you are healing. All right, before we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to go over some key vocabulary. These are words and expressions we used in today's conversation, and they're really useful if you want to talk about emotions, trauma, and healing in English.
1. Childhood trauma. Meaning, emotional or physical pain experienced during early life that continues to affect you in adulthood. Example. Many adults struggle with relationships because of childhood trauma they never learned to process.
2. Emotional neglect. Meaning, a form of trauma where a child's emotional needs, love, comfort, attention are ignored or dismissed. Example, he never talked about his feelings because he grew up with emotional neglect.
3. People-pleasing. Meaning, a behavior where you try to make everyone happy, even at the cost of your own needs, to feel accepted or avoid conflict. Example, her people-pleasing made her say yes to everything, even when she was exhausted.
4. Set boundaries. Meaning, to define what is okay or not okay for you in relationships or situations, and to protect your emotional space. Example, she finally learned to set boundaries and stop saying yes to things that drained her.
5. Inner child. Meaning, the emotional part of you that was shaped by your childhood experiences and still lives inside you as an adult. Example, Healing your inner child can help you understand why you react so strongly to certain situations.